Pedro Almodóvar is back. So, of course, we have to talk about The Room Next Door. This is his first English language feature following his first English language short, which was Strange Way of Life, which we also talked about.
Well, actually,
Alonso.
the first one was The Human Voice, which also starred Tilda Swinton. So, yeah, he did the two shorts in English, and now this.
I will not go out in mortifying anguish.
I don't know what to say.
I'm hoping you'll say yes.
Yes to what?
Tilda is back. She plays a war correspondent named Martha, who is in the final stages of terminal cancer. An old friend of hers, played by Julianne Moore, who's also a writer, comes to visit her, and the two grow close again. And Ingrid, Julianne Moore's character, finds out that Martha basically wants to make end-of-life decisions that may or may not be legal in certain parts of the country, and she asks for Ingrid's assistance in helping her to do that. And so the two of them go off to a house together in upstate New York, where Martha will eventually see her plan through. In the meantime, they spend a lot of time together talking about life and art and other things. And John Turturro pops up as, I guess, both of their ex. But he's,
at different times, though, not the same time.
Yes. He's not a cad. And he's hanging out with Julianne Moore. And there's a great scene with Alessandro Nivola as a policeman with very set ideas about how one should and shouldn't tackle these things. So yeah, this is it's Almodóvar working in English, but it's very much, I think, working in a lot of his concerns. You know, obviously female friendships have been important to him over the course of his career, and he's always sort of enjoyed the dramatic possibilities of like hospitals and illnesses. Certainly looking at his most recent stuff, especially Pain and Glory, I think the idea of death and the dissolution of the body, particularly for an artist, is of great concern to him as he gets older. And so he's really digging into that as well. It's interesting because in Pain and Glory, it's so much about a filmmaker who is ill and worried about not being able to make films anymore. And I interviewed him, and I asked him about John Huston's The Dead, because that movie Huston famously made like while very sick, like he was in a wheelchair, like hooked up to machines, kind of whispering into a loudspeaker, you know, and we talked about The Dead for like 5 minutes. And in this movie, there's a whole bunch of The Dead. They quote it, they watch the film. It's not because of me, but I'm just saying he clearly.
But we don't know it's not because of you. We don't know that.
But this was clearly on his mind, you know, and you know, we always kind of know like the arts that he is into, because he'll just come right out and like here's a shot where like this part of the frame is out of an Andrew Wyeth painting, and that part of the frame is from a David Venerovich painting, you know. Just all of that kind of stuff. There's even a part where John Turturro quotes a line from Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. So it's Almodóvar doing all that stuff that you like that when he does, but it also like it fits. He's not just kind of stopping the thing to be like, hey, look, here's a painter, you know. Like it fits into who these characters are, how they live, what he's trying to say about them and portray about their inner struggles. So yeah, I found this gorgeous. This is you know, of all the actors who've been busy this year, Fred Heckinger and whoever else, like Tilda Swinton, between this and The End and Problemista, like really nailing it in 2024. And yeah, I found this riveting, and it's exciting to see him working in another language, but still, you know, like there's still that Alberto Iglesias score, you know, there's still all that stuff that you get from his movies, the rich interior design and the pops of red and all of that stuff. So yeah, this is another great Almodóvar movie.
Yeah, it's also the third Alessandro Nivola movie of the year.
Oh, that's right.
After
Yes.
Craven and The Brutalist. So he's busy right now,
too.
Yeah, there's a shot where Tilda Swinton is wearing this bright yellow suit on a green chaise lounge with like a bright pop of red lip. I'm like, this is everything. This is it right here. You could look at that one shot and know exactly whose hands you're in.
Yeah.
It's so him.
And the putting on of the lip, by the way, is a visual quote to a scene in Black Narcissus.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole bunch of other classic. There's like a whole night where they just sit around and watch classic film in this movie. So it took a while for this to get going for me.
Okay.
It felt like for the first half hour or so, like the dialogue have been translated awkwardly.
Hmm.
And I know this is based on, I think, an English language novel, correct?
Yes, but I think he pretty much like took a few sort of germs of ideas and then just kind of ran with it in his own directions.
Because there are big chunks where they are sitting around talking, or they're walking and talking, and they're discussing like very specific other writers and other artistic, touchstones and influences. And that felt really slow. And it took a long time for me, at least, to connect with these characters. Like, clearly their bond is meaningful. Like, these actresses have a lovely connection from the very start, but like, it just took a while for me in terms of the pacing. Once they go to the house, it really picks up. And that house is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, and then it becomes Hitchcockian in a lot of ways, with like the use of glass as far as like what it's almost like Vertigo. It feels like in a lot of ways in terms of like the lighting and the score. It feels very dramatic. And then there's like a chilling use of this cold space and the glass. And so that feels like yet another influence here. And that's when the tension really picks up as far as like what's going to happen and when and how will people respond to it. And so there's like this tension that really, really picks up once they get to the house. But then like the scenes with John Turturro are very enlightening too, as far as who both these women are. Also, I was thinking like, oh, it's a little Big Lebowski reunion here. Although I think there are no scenes between the Jesus and Maud in Big Lebowski, but still, I'm like, oh,
funny.
But first thought, of course. No, but I thought from a textural perspective and a color perspective, like Edu Grau is the cinematographer here, and such lush pops of color and just such like, I want to call it spare kind of grandeur, because it's so of the melodrama of Almodóvar, but there's like a minimalism to it in terms of like the bold color and the use of the space and all of that, and how that space is significant in the way that they spend these days together in upstate New York. So yeah, I liked it a lot for a long time. And of course, the two of them make this feel so true. It's a tricky thing to navigate what this movie is about without making it seem, I don't know, maudlin.
Yeah.
But their friendship feels so true that you feel like they would be there for each other in this moment.
Yeah. And for me, I think the part of the film that maybe you were less into, like, I felt like they were really doing the legwork of establishing their relationship to each other. These are people who haven't seen each other for a long time, but they have this like shared history and shared past, and their approaches to the world, I think, sets up like the idea that, hey, I can trust you to do this thing for me, to be there for me and help me, as I go through it. And so I was just sort of immediately kind of drawn into it. But I get it. There are moments where I felt like I wondered if like there was going to be a bit of a tin ear to the dialogue, but that was only fleetingly. And for the most part, that passed quickly, and it really established itself as something that I thought really, had a strong emotional payoff. But yeah, that house is amazing. It's in Spain. It is not upstate.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Interesting. Okay, well then, what is your number then on The Room Next Door?
I said a 9. I put this on my top 10 list for this year just because
cool.
I'm obviously, sure, I'm in the tank for Almodóvar, but I think this is everything that I love about his films is on display here.
I was going to say, I know how much you love him. Like, where for you does this fall in terms of his filmography?
I mean, it's. I think he will go out in such broad directions. I mean, like this is something like Julieta, which is very much a drama. Whereas in a film like Volver, there are sort of moments of intensity, but then also sort of lighter comic moments as well. Or you get something as wildly farcical as like Women on the Verge. It's sort of like how like when during the good Woody Allen period, so every so often he'd toss off like Another Woman or something. So I kind of put that in. This is in the category of like, this is one of his more serious films. But I think it is very satisfying in that way. And it just touches on his brand of you know, I don't even like calling it melodrama feels like dismissive, but it's sort of like,
Yeah.
you know, it is that sort of Circean women's lives story, you know, like them being centered, them being taken seriously, but also kind of getting into these larger issues about illness and mortality that I think are driving him. You know, this period of his career seemed really focused on that.
Yeah. Parallel mothers too.
Yes, exactly.
Women and their struggles and their history and being there for each other.
That gets into like the whole Spanish history, you know, of the 20th century and its sort of ongoing impact. So yeah, I think he's always got a lot of ideas that he wants to get in there, and you know, he juggles them quite gracefully.
I'm going to say a 7.8, just because it took a little while for me to get going with it.
Right.
But once it did, it really, really did. And of course, these are like two of the greatest actresses working today. So just to watch them sharing the screen was a treat. So
yeah, and so much of their career has been about like being muses for extraordinary queer filmmakers, you know, whether it's Julianne Moore with Todd Haynes or Tilda Swinton first with Derek Jarman, but then later with like Luca Guadagnino or Apichatpong Veerasethakul, you know. So it seemed inevitable that eventually like these folks would be working together. So I'm glad we got there.
yes, it is in, I think, like New York and LA right now, and it will go
Yes.
wider in January. So keep an eye out for it.